DawgNation, and welcome back to DawgNation at Large. I'm Kaylee Mansell with DawgNation Insider Connor Riley. So the big news across the state right now, there's a hurricane coming through. Everybody stay safe out there for real. But I think it presents a very important question, and Connor, I would like to extend that question to you. What is the best song that includes hurricane in the title?
I mean, isn't the obvious answer Rock Me Like a Hurricane?
No, I think there are various other answers that could be a part of the competition. Maybe Bob Dylan Hurricane, Bridget Mendler Hurricane.
I mean, when you think hurricane, you think Rock Me Like a Hurricane. I think this is a pretty easy answer.
Okay, but is that like the general consensus answer or the one that you feel the most strongly about? Because it's two completely different things.
No, I think it is both the one that I feel most strongly about and the general consensus.
Okay, well, that's what we have a comment section for. Comment below. Let us know what you think. But on a real note, I hope that we can provide some good insight and some comedic relief while this hurricane is going on. And with that, this is DawgNation at Large.
It's the show for the new breed of Georgia Bulldog fan. This is DawgNation at Large with DawgNation insiders Connor Riley and Kaylee Mansell.
All right, DawgNation, this is DawgNation at Large, and this is a really big week on the show. We got to talk about Alabama a little bit on last week's show, but today we're going to go a little bit more in depth. Here's what we've got going on today's episode of DawgNation at Large, starting with, can the offense get things rolling against the Tide? We're going to find out here soon, but how does that happen? Next, we're going to do a DawgBites segment. Lots going on in the college football world. We've got to get to all of it. Then we will have our meme machine with the best college football memes of the week. And I don't want to give away too much on this last segment because it's kind of a surprise, but it's called Connor's Quiz. So we will get to that later. But let's start with this. Over the summer, it amazed me to see that the primary conversations happening were around how good UGA's offense was going to be, especially for someone like Kirby Smart, who's primarily been a defensive-minded coach. Everyone was so excited about the pass catchers and Carson Beck, but where things stand right now, the conversations around the offense have not been that good, Connor.
No, it's an offense that is coming off its worst game of the season. Its worst game under Carson Beck and Mike Bobo. 160 passing yards for Carson against Kentucky. Really didn't open things up until late in that game. And while some of that, I think, falls on Kirby Smart and the way that he wants to play against Kentucky, knowing he's got a big matchup against Alabama, there have been a lot of questions about Mike Bobo and Carson Beck dating back to last year when I don't think either of them were particularly great against Alabama. And look, right now, Alabama is still the standard to which Georgia is measured against. Kirby Smart's 1-5 against Alabama. The one win came with Stetson Bennett there. I know a lot of people think that Carson Beck is more naturally talented than Stetson Bennett, but Stetson was able to beat Alabama on the biggest stage, doing so in a national title. Carson has to prove that he can do that, and that's why this Saturday is such a big game for both Carson and Georgia offensive coordinator Mike Bobo, who has not beaten Alabama as a staff member since 2007.
Yeah, naturally, the performance against Kentucky drew a lot of criticism for not just Carson Beck, but Mike Bobo as well. And earlier this week, Kirby Smart was asked about the value of these two during bye week. Here's what Coach Smart had to say.
Value for Coach Bobo and Carson, I think it's relative because they had an off week too, so it's not like you're going to make these incredible jumps because of a bye week. What do you do in the bye week? You look back at yourself, you look back and you do quality control, you try to find tendency breakers, you try to find new wrinkles, you try to really get better at blocking and tackling, which is what football is, and that's what we focused on, was that how do we get better as an entire team, even the younger part of your team. So that was the focus of the bye week.
So he mentions that in the bye week, you can reflect back. Now, the offense can't be fixed overnight. The offense probably can't even be fixed in 2 weeks. But with the short amount of time that you had and what you saw in the Kentucky game, what are the changes that Georgia can make within a short amount of time that can be fixed before the Alabama game?
The two big things are they have to play better on the offensive line and they have to do a better job of blocking out on the perimeter. The first one is going to be an interesting test. They have to obviously move some pieces around on the offensive line with Tate Ratledge being out due to tightrope surgery on his ankle as well as an MCL sprain in his knee. And so you're going to insert Micah Morris into that starting lineup. And yes, we know that Georgia rotates a lot at the guard and tackle positions. I do wonder if maybe them rotating a little bit less creates more consistency, more chemistry with this group, and that helps it take a step in the right direction. As far as perimeter blocking, part of it just comes down to effort because there's not a whole lot they can do in terms of personnel and getting new bodies, new bigger bodies in there to help block out on the perimeter. And I know it's not sexy to talk about, but with the way that Georgia wants to play horizontally, going back even to the Todd Monken days, it's critical that you have wide receivers and tight ends that are able to block well out on the perimeter. They did a poor job of that, in my opinion, against Kentucky, and it's going to have to be a whole lot better against Alabama. So part of that comes down to effort. Part of that just comes down to wanting to. And those right now are the biggest issues to me when it comes to this Georgia offense and what we need to see out of them moving forward.
I feel like this conversation can also present the question of something that we've been hinting at, and I'm not sure how true it is, but Alabama, this game is being played relatively early in the schedule. You only have 3 games ahead of this, and I feel like some people point towards, okay, well, maybe Mike Bobo doesn't want to show everything that the Georgia offense could do because he was waiting to this game to do so. Is there any truth in that you would hide things to a certain extent just to push through to get you to this game that is one of the most important on the regular season schedule?
I don't believe that Mike Bobo is hiding it, but I do believe that Kirby Smart has some things that he has been saving for this game. And look, we've seen Georgia make, I don't want to say drastic changes, but noticeable changes with players and personnel in big type of games before. You think Lewis Cine moving to safety before the LSU SEC championship game in 2019, those types of things. So I do expect to see some new wrinkles from this Georgia offense on Saturday. I expect to see them be a little bit more aggressive in the downfield passing game, certainly compared to where they were against Kentucky. And Carson, to quote the Bear, he's just got to let it rip. He's got to go out there and be himself, and I think be the best version of himself. He was not that against Kentucky for a number of reasons, but if Georgia's going to win this game, Carson Beck needs to outplay Jalen Moreau, and Carson Beck needs to be, quite frankly, better than he has on Saturday than any game he has been in this season so far.
So it seems to me that a problem that we're having now was a similar problem that we faced last year before the bye weekend. That is slow starts. And you couldn't kind of give Carson some grace for last year because he was a first-year starter, but this year, not something that you necessarily expected to see. And it's been a problem on this offense, and CKS was asked about this earlier this week. Here is Coach Kirby Smart on starting fast.
I wouldn't say that we've started fast. I would say that everybody wants to start fast, but sometimes it's like that. And sometimes there's no rhyme and reason, and then sometimes there's things you do that you could do better, you could execute better. Sometimes they just beat you and they just whip you. And it's gone both ways, offensively and defensively. We've had drives defensively that we gave up too much field position and too many consecutive third downs that we didn't get off the field that maybe just made our offense start back up. But it hasn't been perfect.
We're going to exclude Tennessee Tech from this conversation and just focus on the P4 schools that we played. In facing Clemson and Kentucky, UGA has not scored a touchdown in the first half. Is there any world where Georgia can beat this Alabama team without a faster start than we've seen in these first 3 games?
First of all, we did not score any points.
Oh my gosh,
Alabama.
can we get over this already?
In this game. 2, Kaylee, do you remember what happened the last time Georgia played Alabama?
We lost. They lost.
We did. Well, first of all, we did not.
They
lose.
lost.
Georgia lost. But Georgia scored first in that game. They scored an opening drive touchdown in that game. So I do think that there is a little bit of some of this is an overblown issue in terms of scoring first, in terms of starting fast, so to say. I think the big thing is being consistent from the jump and having an evenness to the way you play. You saw last year, yes, Georgia goes down and scores to start that game, but then they have a 3-and-out on the next drive, and the Georgia offense puts the Georgia defense in a bad position there. So I think the big thing with this game is in the first half and in the second half, can you play a complete 4-quarter game? Can you be as good as you were in the first quarter and as you are in the fourth quarter? And if you're able to do that, odds are you're probably not going to have a 4-quarter game with how good this Georgia team is. We've seen them really ramp things up over the course of the game. Obviously, the Clemson game and the Kentucky game to an extent as well. They were playing better in the second half. I think if they're able to find that level of consistency to start, we're not going to necessarily talk so much about the slow start, so to speak, but rather the overall natural ability about this team.
See, I feel like when I listened to what Kalen DeBoer had to say about the keys to victory for Alabama in the game, he brings up that one of the things that they could do is rattle Carson Beck, and that's the last thing that we want to see from this Georgia team. You don't want to be in this game playing catch-up. I do feel like if you can have a faster start, not necessarily on the first drive or the first quarter, but in the first half, then all the momentum is going your way, and you're not spent the entire game playing catch-up like they had to do with Kentucky.
You're a big ketchup fans, it sounds like. I mean, I don't prefer ketchup. It's not one of my favorite condiments.
Clearly, your shirt says mustard.
I think for Georgia in this game, I think they really relish the opportunity to go into Alabama and make a statement there. This is a program that loves playing these big games. Kirby Smart's well aware of the fact that he's 1-5 against Alabama. He's well aware of the fact that he's never won in Tuscaloosa there. And a lot of these players on this team came back to Georgia this year to play this game against Alabama and try and beat Alabama. And they having the ability to do it in Tuscaloosa, I think matters a lot to this Georgia team. And because of that, I think this is going to be a little bit more of a loose team, a little bit more of a freed up team. Whereas I do think that there is some pressure on Alabama in this game. It hasn't really been talked a whole lot from the national media standpoint, but this is really the first chance to see if they can continue what Nick Saban built at Alabama. And you wonder if things don't go well for Alabama to start with that crowd. Is there a nervous energy that sort of sneaks in? Is there sort of maybe some false bravado and some worry that happens there? You think back to the 2008 game between these two teams where Georgia, had beaten Alabama the year before and was confident. Alabama came in, and to quote Scott Cochran, Georgia wore black to its own funeral that day. And so I wonder if maybe something like that is similar in the cards this coming Saturday between Georgia and Alabama.
My personal favorite conspiracy theorist, I think that's right, Brandon Adams thinks that Georgia has to score more than 24 points to win this game because a lot of the losses that have come to Alabama in the Kirby Smart era, Georgia has been stuck at 24, and you're a pretty rational person. Do you think that this is true, or is this one of just Brandon Adams' rabbit holes that he's gone down?
Brandon Adams and I have been talking about Georgia needing to score 30 points to beat Alabama, I think, since Kaylee was in high school. So I think that the big thing here with this Georgia offense is it's not so much, the 24 number there, because I think this Georgia defense is going to do some positive things against Alabama's offense in terms of limiting them. I think they have the personnel to match up well with them. I think the big thing for this Georgia offense is, one, not giving Alabama short fields, limiting turnovers there. And two, making the most out of the trips to their red zone. It's very old football information. It's very boring. But when they get in there, they can't really settle for field goals. And so you saw back in, say, the 2018 SEC championship game between these two teams, you've seen them maybe settle for field goals at times. They don't need to score a touchdown on every drive. They don't need to score 50 to beat Alabama. I don't even know if this game in particular, they need to score 30 to beat Alabama. But I do think that Georgia needs to be able to score more touchdowns than field goals if they're going to win this game.
So in just a minute, we are going to catch up on all things Travaris Robinson, Dan Lanning, some other drama going on in the college football world right now. But first, we want to remind you guys that here on DawgNation at Large, we are so excited to have Zagoria Law Firm as a partner. When we do our DawgBites segment and then get to do this, it all makes sense when we put it together. What we love about Zagoria Law Firm is that they're the only law firm in the state that specializes in representing people bitten by dogs. That's right, dog fans. They are the official dog bite injury lawyers of the Georgia Bulldogs. They literally wrote the book on how to win these cases. So if you or a loved one has been hurt by someone else's dog, give them a call at 833-GA-DOGBITE. That's DOGBITE. Or check out their website at ZagoriaLaw.com. Again, that's ZagoriaLaw.com. And this segment could not be brought to you by anything other than Zagoria Law because this is DawgBites. So we've got a few things on the board for you. Let's start with this one. UGA wide receiver London Humphreys. Still going to be a game time decision, but he could potentially be out of Saturday's game with mono. One of the things that we talked about in the first segment is how much has Bobo held back. Now, London Humphreys had 2 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown in the Clemson game. We haven't really seen him do much since. I thought that this was going to potentially be a game where we could see a player like him shine, but now someone else is going to have to step up in his place because I doubt we're going to see him in Tuscaloosa on Saturday.
There's no need to doubt it. He has been ruled out for Saturday's game against Alabama. It was on the availability report last night. Another wide receiver found his name on there, Sokovie White, as well, a freshman. I wasn't expecting much from Sokovie going into this game, but you wonder about this Georgia wide receiver position. Look, I think perimeter blocking is part of the reason London Humphreys hasn't been able to get on the field more consistently for Georgia, and that's going to put a lot more on the plate of Arian Smith, a guy who made a big catch last year against Alabama, an explosive play guy. Can he be more consistent? Can he have 3-4 catches in this game in addition to stretching the field vertically? So I think this Georgia wide receiver position in particular, now with no London Humphreys out due to mono, no Sokovie White with an undisclosed injury potentially, I wonder what we're going to see from this group and wonder how this even puts a bigger spotlight on Georgia's tight ends as well.
Moving on, our new co-defensive coordinator, Travaris Robinson, returning to his former team where he was on the defensive staff at Alabama. I mean, how much can he really give any insight into this team? A lot of the players are gone. The coaching staff is different. Is there anything that Travaris Robinson can bring to the table that's going to give Georgia some sort of edge?
I think that's a little bit overblown. Alabama did have 10 defensive backs from last year's roster that are no longer on this team. So in terms of that position group, it might be a little tough. And for as much as Travaris coached there and knows the players on that team and knows that environment and building, Georgia recruited a lot of those guys as well, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So I think what Travaris Robinson brings to this game, it helps Georgia more so than it is a negative for Alabama in that game. We've seen coaches switch sides beforehand. And so I think going into this game for T-Rob in particular, how do you go about slowing down Ryan Williams? A 17-year-old is a really strong pass catcher so far, 10 catches, 285 yards, and 4 touchdowns. How Robinson's back end safeties and cornerbacks go about slowing down Ryan Williams, I think is going to go a long way in possibly determining who wins this game, because for as much turnover as Alabama's had on the defensive side of the ball, Ryan Williams aside, I don't think that Alabama is as good at the wide receiver position this year as they were last year when they had Jermaine Burton, when they had Isaiah Bond as well.
Well, one thing's for certain. We know that Coach Robinson understands the intensity of this game on both sides. So excited to see what he does on Saturday. Now, Dan Lanning, not with Georgia anymore, but still managing to find a way to help him. Kirby Smart, Kaylee DeBoer have never faced at any level. Dan Lanning was 0-3 against DeBoer when he was at Washington. I'm curious to see. I mean, I know we're never going to get to hear the conversation, but I feel like DeBoer is more of an offensive guy where Kirby is a defensive guy. So it's nice to know that Kirby can reach out to his good friend Dan Lanning and still get some help in this game.
Yeah, I'm interested in sort of what Dan has told Kirby there. You know, they played them twice last year. Oregon was favored in both games and lost both times. Kaylee has more success in the Connor Kaylee showdowns than Dan Lanning has had against Kaylee DeBoer. So from that standpoint, I don't know. And like, look, Kirby Smart knows a lot about football. He is one of the smartest and best coaches in this game. And so a lot of these things he's going to be able to figure out and pick up on his own there. So I'm really interested in seeing how this sort of matchup goes. Obviously, so much of this rivalry is baked around Nick Saban and Kirby Smart for years. And so we're sort of entering a new era where there is no real history with Kaylee DeBoer. And based off what I've seen from Kaylee DeBoer this week in terms of press conferences and things like that, he doesn't have much interest in sort of leaning into the wrestling aspects that come with this. There's no drama with him. There's no theatrics with him. He's very plain, very vanilla. And so I wonder how that plays into where this rivalry moves going into the future.
You see my face right now? This is my I'm sick of it face. Okay? Showdown comment too soon. We can circle back to that next week. But for now, let's move on to this. Some weird things have been happening this week with opt-outs. Starting with the UNLV quarterback, I believe Matthew Sluka, put out a statement on Twitter that said that he was going to utilize his redshirt year and opt out of all additional games due to certain representations that were made to him and were not upheld after he enrolled. Now, keep in mind, UNLV off to a 3-0 start, so we can only assume that UNLV promised him a certain amount of money, that maybe wasn't met. But then, in a turn of events, the Rebels athletic program is claiming that Sluka's actions were instead an attempt to cash in on a hot start and wanted to receive more money than they negotiated on. I mean, this sounds like a script to a movie. I feel like we're going to see a lot more information come out on this. And we'll talk about Bear Alexander in a minute, but Connor, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, we had to talk Kaylee into doing this show today. She was trying to opt out, looking for more money. But, fortunately, us here at DawgNation at Large, Cody, myself, our wonderful producers back in Atlanta, we're able to keep Kaylee, and we're excited. We've had a great start to the season, and we're eager to keep building off of what we've built here at DawgNation at Large.
That has nothing to do with the question that I just asked you about this in particular. I will give you the chance to answer one more time.
Yeah, look, this is something I think, unfortunately, this is just the reality of modern college football. There's no good guy in this story. I think both UNLV and Sluka aren't exactly the heroes that they envision themselves to be. It sounds like there's some confusion about one assistant coach and his involvement there. And this isn't going to be a one-off. I think this is something we're going to continue to see. You've sort of already seen it with Bear Alexander at USC. And so, it's an interesting story. I wonder how much of this is driven by the fact that it's 3-0 UNLV. If this is an 0-3 team, is there one, is this even happening? And two, is there even the same level of interest? Because I know it does frustrate a lot of people to see, a guy opt out. Now, granted, Sluka just got there this offseason, transferring in from Holy Cross. And so I think that makes it maybe a little bit different in terms of a guy that has been with a team for years. But I think that this is just the new reality of college football. And at the end of the day, I think this sucks for the general fan, more so than anyone from the UNLV or Matthew Sluka camps.
Well, he was not the only player to opt out of the rest of the season this week. The former UGA defensive lineman Bear Alexander, who is now at USC, also announced that he would be utilizing his redshirt year, opting out of the rest of the year after he only played 21 snaps versus Michigan. This is no tea, no shade. I'm serious. I don't think I have seen a player yet in the post-NIL era that has left Georgia and has been better off. I don't know that much about math, but I do recognize that there's a common denominator here.
I mean, I thought Jermaine Johnson had a better career at Florida State after he transferred out. Again, sometimes, there are examples of that. I'm not saying everyone that leaves Georgia goes on to have a worse career elsewhere, but I think with Bear Alexander, you look at his career, he was at a different high school every year, and then he was at Georgia for 1 year, and then he was at USC for 1 year, flirted with the transfer portal back in April, and now, looks to be on his way out once again. Again, he wants to start, he wants to play a lot of snaps. It sounds like he wants to have his cake and eat it too. And you'll wonder just about the work ethic and the things that are going on in there. Like, this guy has been a headache at every stop that he has been at. And at a certain point, you no longer look at the programs and look at the individual there, or the parties involved with this. With USC, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And that's what has happened here with Bear Alexander. And I am sure that there are Georgia fans out there that are thrilled to no longer have this Bear Alexander headache, even with what he potentially brings as a talented defensive lineman. But Kaylee, do you know that he had more sacks in his 1 year at at Georgia than his entire USC career?
Did not know that specifically, but not surprised by that.
Yeah, so it just sort of speaks to where he is and who he is. An incredibly, talented prospect, a guy with tons of potential, but he has just seemed never to be able to get out of his own way and realize that potential.
Yeah, I mean, the clear difference with Sluka possibly opting out because of money, Bear Alexander opting out because he wasn't getting the playing time that he was promised in the first place. I have a feeling that we're going to be covering many stories like this in the future, and this is just the beginning of a very long stretch. Let's wrap things up on DawgBites with this. College game day. No surprise that they're coming to Georgia, Alabama. Nick Saban's homecoming. I think a lot of Georgia fans are anticipating that this is just going to end up being one big Nick Saban love fest, and that's to be expected. But I'm very curious to see how the other people on the panel approach this game. Is everybody going to take Alabama? Is Nick Saban going to take Alabama? There's a lot to to question, but as a Georgia fan, I would not expect it to be unbiased.
Yeah, I think if you're a Georgia fan watching this, maybe you'll find something else to do. Look, College Game Day, I just think has shown that it is no longer a program for the Georgia football program, or at least for fans of the Georgia football program. And we can go down the line here and look, like the David Pollock thing is the David Pollock thing. ESPN has continued laying off personalities left and right. Pat McAfee has long had issues with the Georgia fan base. Some of that you can understand because I think he was wrongly blamed for the ESPN decision to let David Pollock go, but he has held that grudge and gone at Georgia fans and had a back and forth with Georgia fans. And part of that is just his personality. This is the first game that Kirk Herbstreit has worked with Georgia since the Dylan Raiola comments that came out last February. You wonder how cuddly Georgia fans are with Kirk Herbstreit there. I am compelled to point out that Reese Davis, who I actually think does a fantastic job.
Me too.
Do you know where he went to college, Kaylee?
I'm envisioning it. I've heard it before. I've read it before. But now that we're sitting here in this moment, all I can think about is not where he went to school. But I feel like one time when I had to sit in on a slum for Reese Davis, we basically had like a staring contest, and I was the first one to blink. So that's all that's coming to my mind right now. Not where he went to school.
Reese Davis went to the University of Alabama and graduated from there. And then you obviously have the Nick Saban aspect of it all. So I expect a lot of love to be praised on the Saban. I think a lot of national media types are going to pick Alabama to win this game based off what we saw from Georgia against Kentucky. Yeah. So if you're a Georgia fan of Game Day is no longer the program that it used to be. It's no longer the, I think, embrace of college football. There are a lot of more egos, and it is more individual driven now than it used to be. And so, find something else to do. Watch our lovely DawgNation pregame show that'll be on a little later in the day, or watch many of our wonderful videos that we have put out over the course of the week.
I could not have said it better myself. Skip out on College Game Day. Watch DawgNation Game Day at 5:30 on Saturday. One thing that we don't miss out on here, and it's become a staple every week, something that we all look forward to, this is our meme machine.
Who's that coming down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's a meme machine and red and black. It's a meme machine and red and black.
And really? Come on.
I'm looking at the memes.
I see it.
Look,
no,
I'm looking at the memes.
That is just so not true.
Yeah. I'm
gonna have to take that thing away from you.
No longer allowed, Connor. You're on probation.
Yeah. Okay. And here's the thing.
Oh darn.
I'm gonna take a point away.
I'm all for that. Unlike Cody and Connor, just because there is a bye week doesn't mean that the college football Twitter world does nothing. No, the memes don't stop. So I think it's time we go ahead and get started with our meme machine. I will go first. If you've been in the college football Twitter lore for quite some time, there was an account by the name of 321 Knowles that said if they lost, he would eat dog crap out of a red Solo cup, and then they lose, and then suddenly this guy falls off the face of the earth. And I love this kind of humor. This comes from CFB_Pat. He says, if UGA football loses tomorrow, I will eat dog blank out of a red Solo cup. Of course, the date on this is September 20th, and so that meant that Georgia was not going to play. But a lot of people in the comments didn't understand this and were like, hey, man, Georgia doesn't play tomorrow. I love this kind of sense of humor, and I'm still keeping up with whether we're going to see Mr. 321 Knowles ever again.
Kaylee, I think you should have spent some more time looking at your phone to find some better memes than that.
Ooh.
I mean, do we have a problem? Is there something going on? I have been really nice today, and I don't know what's going on.
I don't like being stuck in the middle of all this. I just don't think it's the right way to honor Toby Keith, rest in peace, with his red Solo cup. Anyway, all right, my turn for the meme. Let's go with Humphreys to get some love this week. It is from Anchorman. It says, 90% of the time, we win every time. And Ron Burgundy says that doesn't make any sense. If you missed it, after the game on his radio show this week, Humphreys, after they lost to Arkansas, said, if we played 9 more times, we would win 9 more times. Yeah, Coach, we hear you. We hear you. And he looks like he does. I love his face in that as well. So there you go. That is my meme for this week. Humphreys deserves all the hate he can get.
I'm going to take Humphreys out to a nice seafood dinner and never call him again. Great job there, Cody. My meme machine, similar pop culture-esque. Obviously, the Sluka news, it was compared a little bit to a drug deal in terms of the way that NIL is run nowadays. There's no contracts. Nothing is written down. And naturally, that brought out a lot of Sopranos and The Wire references. So local small business comes up with $10 million for top prospect, and it's the boys from the Bada Bing, Tony Soprano. I would have loved to have seen him try and turn around the Rutgers football program and becoming a big-time NIL booster.
Kaylee, are you a Sopranos fan?
I've seen some Sopranos, sure.
You don't seem to be very excited about Connor's meme, though.
I mean, it doesn't make me feel any sort of way.
We are very glad you did not opt out of today's show.
Absolutely. I don't know why anybody thought I would opt out of today's show.
You know, the weather.
Yeah, there's a hurricane. Would have been easy to do so.
I showed up just like everyone else did. It was never in question.
Cody, the real glue guy, coming in, making sure this show gets done and sticks together. You know, really, I just can't say enough nice things about Cody.
I mean,
well, there's no showdown today. You're not going to get any points, but I do appreciate the love.
Look,
I know that's why I know that there's no showdown, and that's why I'm just naturally being nice.
Okay, I think Kaylee, you can kind of put Connor across the coals here.
Yeah, I was going to say,
test him a little bit.
Connor's been a real know-it-all on today's show, but we're going to find out if he really knows it all. This is Connor's quiz. All right, Connor. In the Kirby Smart era, Georgia and Alabama have faced off 6 times. I have one trivia question from all 6 times that they've played, and we're going to see if you can get them right. How are you, just like in general, how are you feeling about this? Are you confident in yourself? I mean, how much do you really know?
I'm never confident in myself, but I'm excited for this. I had no prep time for this, so I'm ready to go.
I told you to study up, buddy, yesterday when we talked, so let's see if you took advantage of it.
That could have been for anything.
That is as much of a hint as I was willing to give you. I feel like that was enough, but here we go. We're going to start with this one. In the 2017 National Championship game, how many yards was the field goal Rodrigo Blankenship kicked to take the lead in overtime?
Was it 53?
Nope. Close. You were close. It was over 50. It was 51. So Connor gets the first one wrong. And I thought I would be, thank you. Thought I would be cheering for you in this instance. But in light of how today's show has gone, I am rooting for your downfall. Okay.
I mean, you always are.
No, I'm not. I usually am on your side, but not today. All right. Let's do the 2018 SEC Championship game. Who caught the first touchdown pass for Georgia?
I know DeAndre Swift had a touchdown catch in that game. I know he ran for one as well. I'm trying to think. So 2018 wide receivers. That would have been Riley Ridley. I think Terry Godwin might have still been on that team. Mecole Hardman was in that game, but I don't think he had a big day that day. I know DeAndre Swift caught a touchdown pass in that game in the first half, so I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift.
I didn't even have to tell you it was wrong. The buzzer is perfect. It was actually, weren't even close. We were getting colder and colder. It was tight end Isaac Nada who caught the first touchdown pass of the 2018 SEC Championship. All right, let's go do all right, 0-2 to start. You still got 4 more, though. You can redeem yourself here. I think whenever we did the walk-ons versus Kaylee's classmates, you got the first one wrong, and you came back 5 in a row to take the lead. So let's start with, in the 2020 regular season game, how many interceptions did Stetson Bennett throw?
He threw 3.
He did throw for 3. Nice job. See, there we go. Finally got one on the board. All right. 1, 4, 3. These are more recent, so I have more confidence in you when it comes to these. In the 2021 SEC Championship game, UGA led by 3 after the first quarter. How many points did Alabama score in the second quarter to take the lead?
Alabama did not score in the first quarter of that game.
Nope.
And I know that Alabama, they hit a 60-yard touchdown pass to Jamison Williams to start the third quarter. And then the only other touchdown they had was a pick six by Jordan Battle. I'm going to say they scored 28 points in the second quarter of that game. It was 28-17 at halftime, I recall.
They scored 24 points.
24 points.
I thought you were actually going to go low on that. For you to go high, that was actually pretty impressive. It was a lot of points. They scored 24 in the second quarter to take the lead. All right, you got to get the next two right to have 50% on this. If you get 3 for 3, we'll call it passing. We'll give you a pass fail here. In the 2021 National Championship game, Kaylee Ringo had a pick six to add to UGA's lead. How many yards was his return?
68.
Oh, Connor, 79. I thought you would get that one. I thought you would. Okay, well, last one. And you should get this because if you ever go back and listen to our show, I said this 2 weeks ago. So you should know this one because I know that when I'm talking, you're not on your phone and you listen to everything I say, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. I listen when Kaylee talks.
Exactly. In the 2023 SEC Championship game, UGA had a false start that forced a field goal 5 yards back that Peyton Woodring would go on to miss. At what yardage did he miss the kick from?
Was that a 51-yard field goal attempt?
It was a 50-yard field goal attempt.
Come on.
This isn't multiple choice. You either get it right.
That would
or
actually,
you
we'll do a Kaylee's quiz next week and we'll see how that goes.
I come up with the segments, so I say no. You're the one that knows everything, so. But do you have?
Evidently,
would you
I
like
don't.
to? How about this? So you went one for 6, but I will grant you 2 points. If you can tell me something that's going to, outside of our touchdown player predictions, if you can tell me something that's more specific, not super general, that's going to happen in Saturday's game, I'll grant you the 2 points, and I'll give you a pass in next week's show.
Georgia is going to win the coin toss and defer to the second half.
Okay, I will do that. That's a 50-50 opportunity.
More than that, because it's actually, with the way the math works. They have multiple choices.
Okay, that's fine. See, I told y'all early in the show I'm not good at math. I know my strengths and weaknesses in this world. Math is not one of them, unless it's money. Then I can do that. But this is the part in the show where we're going to bring on Cody Chaffins, and we are going to try and predict a player that's going to score a touchdown.
We haven't been very good at this.
No, we haven't. It's a lot harder than it sounds.
All right. So, Kaylee, or do we want a coin flip? How are we doing this?
No.
Connor did lose his quiz.
No.
There's some very specific questions, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's got your beef, I think, is with Carson Beck, where he exactly held the ball when they kicked the field goal there.
The big play with Isaac Nauta in that game in particular was he had a breakaway touchdown and he got chased down from behind. And then that leads to a Georgia field goal, which Rodrigo Blankenship misses. And that gave Alabama the momentum it needed to ultimately win that game.
All right, so who gets to pick first this week?
I believe it's Connor, right?
All right, Connor. Mr. Mustard.
All right.
Colonel Mustard.
I will go first. I have actually hit one of these. I did better on my quiz than Kayla has done with these predictions in this spot. I'm going to take Dylan Bell here. I think this is a big week for Dylan Bell. I think he's someone that Georgia wants to get more involved in the offense. I think he is someone that I think intentionally has had a quiet start to the season, and I look for him against a young Alabama secondary to have a big game and get his first touchdown of the season. He's always played better on the road than he has necessarily in Sanford, and actually it'll be his second touchdown of the season because he did have one against Tennessee Tech. So I like Dylan Bell to score a touchdown this week.
All right, Kaylee, who you got?
They say that third time's the charm. So I'm going to take Trevor Etienne. I'm going to triple down. He has failed both me and Connor already, and I would like for his touchdown, his first one, to be under my name. So I'm running strong for Trevor Etienne here. Please.
All right. Very good choices. I'll throw out an Oscar Delp this week. We'll see if we can get Oscar Delp in the end zone for the first time this year, right? Hadn't had a touchdown yet.
Yeah.
So
No, he hasn't.
Talking about slow starts. It's time. So we'll see if we can break out. All right. Good stuff, y'all.
All right. Connor, you already know it's coming. What did you learn on today's show?
I learned that Isaac Nada scored the first touchdown caught the first touchdown in Georgia's 2018 SEC championship loss. I don't necessarily know why Kaylee decided this week to bring up all those past losses and give some bad vibes going into this game, but I am as confident in this Georgia team and what they're going to be able to do and go on the road this weekend. So I like them to win despite the vibes and general aura that Kaylee has brought to the show this week.
Okay, let me just say this. Connor turned down my first pitch for this segment. So we didn't go with it. I came up with this. He didn't even have to do any planning. This was actually intended to make life easier for Connor, not more difficult. He made it more difficult on himself by not knowing these things. Again, just like last week, I had higher hopes for you.
Aim low.
I can't. We're my co-hosts. I got to hold you accountable and make sure that you rise to meet me on my level. DawgNation, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to talk about this game with you guys over the last 2 weeks. Y'all stay safe out there in the hurricane, and we hope to see you all at our DawgNation invasion in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. We'll talk to you next Thursday at 7 o'clock.